Welcome to the Uninvited Voice podcast.
Well, grace and peace, everyone. We have got to talk about Toure Neblett and a few controversial videos that he posted last week concerning ICE agents and the right of white liberals to call Black people who do not fall in alignment with his political views the N-word. I'm going to show you one of the videos that is the most problematic, and then I'll come back with my commentary. Here we go.
Agent, the N-word. Their argument, that word has been used as a weapon against our community. When you say we have suffered because of that word, you're including the Black ICE agent in we. He is not in we. He is not Black. He is not part of the community. People say that was the last word many of us heard before being lynched. That is 100% correct. But if you're a Black ICE agent, you're part of a lynch mob chasing people of color. He's not a descendant of those who got lynched. He's a descendant of those who were doing the lynching. If you're a Black man in ICE, you have abandoned the community. You are a traitor. Maybe he's more of a slave catcher than a house Negro, but either way, you have destroyed your connection to the community. He's not a brother. He's not Black. He's not part of our community. He's definitely not your brother. He would unalive you in a second. He wouldn't think, oh, that's a sister, I shouldn't. No, he would think, Massa Stephen Miller said, I can do anything I want. So you're defending Stephen from Django with a hammer who's part of a lynch mob chasing down people of color. Make that make sense. We understand all of this quite easily when it comes to Clarence Thomas and Candace Owens. We have excommunicated them. Their skin is Black, but they're not part of the community. We would never stand up for their rights. We take no Black pride from their success. They're permanently banned from the symbolic cookout. Being Black in ICE is being Clarence Thomas and Candace Owens on steroids. He is not one of us. Fuck that. And if you can't see that, I might be side-eyeing you.
Now, my first question would be, what gives Toure, a man of Caribbean descent married to a non-Black woman, the right to decide who belongs within the community of historic Black America? Who empowered him with the power to erase someone's lineage and ancestry based on their political alignment or employment? Toure was raised in upper-middle-class Boston and now lives with his family in the affluent brownstone neighborhoods of Fort Greene, Brooklyn. That part of Brooklyn has undergone significant gentrification over the past 20 years. It started out Black, and now it is what Toure imagines as an interracial paradise of woke people. The truth is, they chased the Black people out of there. There is no Black community there because they were all displaced by people like Toure and his wife. Now, although he praises the community, in another video is interracial and super woke when he's talking about a Black couple hanging a Trump flag, I have to ask, were they woke when all of those lower income Black people who lived there for decades could no longer afford to live there? Toure's grandparents immigrating from the Caribbean does not diminish his Blackness, but it means that he does not descend from the particular American lineage formed under U.S. slavery and segregation. And he has been passing as a part of that lineage for some time, initially as a hip-hop journalist who obsessively stood on the shoulders of Michael Jackson for validation. The lineage of historic Black America is not interchangeable with every branch of the African diaspora. It just is not. In the same way that you consider a Puerto Rican, a Black American is actually an American. It's a distinct culture, admixture, and lineage. Not saying that Barbados and the British Virgin Islands may not share that same admixture. However, the culture evolves separately. And it would be nice if you saw someone like Toure report on Barbados or the British Virgin Islands. Report on your history. Set up gatekeeping with your history, not historic Black America. So, the distinction matters when you started invoking the most violent language in American racial history and giving it to your white liberal peers a pass to weaponize it against Black Americans in this country. It's offensive. No matter how you say it, no matter how you curry it up, it's offensive. So, it doesn't matter how many generations you've been here. You don't have the right to step into our history as if it were some kind of costume to be worn when convenient and weaponized. It borders on manipulation when people like Toure invoke Black American lineage rhetorically, yet support policies that displace those same communities and introduce new layers of bias under the language of progress. People like Toure speak about white supremacy as if it were a monster hiding in the brush, something that we should all fear. Yet behind closed doors, they're sitting in pet-friendly cafes drinking matcha with that same monster, as long as it aligns with their agenda. Then it becomes us against them, the unwashed masses. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about classism, which is very common among a certain subset of Black Americans and people from the diaspora who have moved here and become somewhat successful. They do not mind racism until it comes to their door. Have you noticed? The only time you see someone like a star or an entertainer or someone super rich complain about racism, the only time you see it is when they experience it from their white liberal peers in shared spaces. When they're going to buy Christian Louboutin boots or something, and someone tells them that they can't afford it or something. That's the only time they get outraged. However, they could care less when they're in a public space and maybe they're sitting and there's someone that's not so wealthy in their presence, and they start talking with their white liberal peer about that person because it's okay to throw shade and castigate that Black person because they're not in their group. They don't have enough money. See, that's the problem I have with a lot of people. A lot of people don't realize that classism and racism are interchangeable. They're the same. It all depends on who's invoking it. So when you start telling your liberal friends that it's okay, it's showing more about how you are as a person. Like I said, they could care less about racism. The only problem that I see with people like Toure, people like Toure will marry whites. Don Lemon is the same way. They marry white people. They sleep with them. They go all around with them. But they're constantly talking about who's Black and who's not. Every conversation they have, they sit in these conferences and shared spaces with white people, and the constant conversation is Black, 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 Black. And you notice the way he says it. He's not Black. He said it just like a typical liberal, typical white liberal. How can you sit there on your funky butt and say that you derive no pride from someone like Clarence Thomas? Because Clarence Thomas, to you, is not Black. You get to come into my country and say that someone like Clarence Thomas is not Black simply because he doesn't align with your communist liberal views. Now, I have another thing that I want to share, and I think it's very interesting. I was writing a Substack essay on Zora Neale Hurston and the blackballing that she experienced. A lot of people don't know this. Zora Neale Hurston was a very conservative, liberal woman, very conservative. She was a Republican, because most blacks in the South were Republicans for a very long time. And she was from the South. She grew up in a very close-knit black community that, although not necessarily wealthy, they looked out for each other, and they were not concerned about segregation because everything they had was appropriate and done right there. You know, so they weren't concerned about, they had good teachers, they had good schools, and as you can see, this is a young woman that brought herself from Eatonville and ended up graduating from Bernard College. She also attended, which is a part of Columbia, she also attended Howard University and received an undergrad from there before moving on to Bernard College. She was Zeta Phi Beta. She was a part of the Harlem Renaissance, but yet because her politics did not align with what they were doing in the Harlem Renaissance, and I know we romanticize the Harlem Renaissance, but most of them were drifting towards Langston Hughes, Paul Robeson. Most of them were drifting towards communism and Russia at the time. They folded right into it. Now, I'm going to give you just a little snippet of an article that she wrote in 1951. And I want you to tell me if this sounds familiar and if it resonates with what you heard Toure say. The experts who watch communist strategy point out that the Reds are now beginning a rather important drive to build up their Negro membership. They give two reasons for this. First, the commies hope to lump the American Negro in with all the other colored peoples of the world, so that we will feel that if we fight against the North Koreans or Mao's hordes, we will be acting against our own interests, that all colored people of the world must hang together against the whites. Does that sound familiar? That is directly from their playbook. Now, here's another snippet from that very same article. My active curiosity was aroused when around 1930, Langston Hughes and Lewis Thompson, who was known as Ms. Moscow when she died in 1999, led a group of some 20-odd Negroes to this same Russia. It was beginning to look like a trend. The Kremlin was extremely interested in the American Negro. The communists wanted to be our kissing friends. Now, when you look at Toure and what Toure said, and what you hear from a lot of people concerning this people of color, and we share a common oppressor in white supremacy. When you hear that, it is very apparent where it is coming from. These are words that she wrote warning people back in 1951 based on what she heard and what she observed in 1925. And now we're still hanging on to it. They managed to wrap and mingle us into that ideology to the point that now you have the immigrants who have come into this country and have been indoctrinated by it, feeling as if they have the right to decide who is, quote unquote, black and not. If that is not replacement, I don't know what is. It's all a Jedi mind trick, and you need to be aware of it. People like Toure are dangerous to the history of this country, to our history, as well as to this country, period. People like Toure, these people running around talking about people of color and protecting illegals from coming in here, there's another subset. If you read this article, and I'll put a link so that you can find this article, read this essay that she wrote in 1951 and think about your surroundings now. What they want is another whole entire bottom cast of people so that they can change the system that we have in the United States. They do not like capitalism. They want to overthrow it. And the more people you bring in, and the more people you indoctrinate, because Black people never really moved in that direction. The only time you started hearing this whole people of color Crayola politics was right around the time of Obama. A little bit earlier, but you really didn't start hearing it until the quote-unquote racialicious crowd started coming in. And that is the crowd that Toure is a part of. Toure is a danger to this country. Toure should not be listened to. And Toure does not sit on his spunky butt with his white wife in Fort Greene and decide who's Black and who is not. That is not his place. He has stepped across the boundaries, and he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Toure should be canceled. All right, for now, I am going to get out of here, drink another latte, maybe a matcha, and mind my business again. Hopefully, I'll have a chance to make another few videos for you, and hopefully you've enjoyed this one. At any rate, subscribe, like, and feel free to share.